Aloha, namaste, and welcome again to another story from the Krishna book, translated and purported upon by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My name is Janapati Das, and as usual with my videos on my YouTube channel, I'm reading and commenting on the Krishna book. And so if this is your first time, welcome. Feel free to go back if you like to have the full picture to start from my first video. And if you haven't, like and subscribe and share my channel so that more people can hear about the wonderful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Please accept my respects. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my spiritual grandfather, and my Guru Dev, my spiritual master, the disciple of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarapananda Srila Prabhupada. And I am going to start like I normally start, and I left my guitar on my bed, so I'm just going to grab it really quickly. Okay, we are going to chant. We're going to chant Krishna's names. So feel free to join along. Got a little bit of buzziness in my... Well, you buy a new capo and then it still doesn't work very well. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya right, Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome. We had a little bit of time between the last video I made and now. And as we recall, the last story we were reading was the prayers by Lord Indra. Lord Indra, of course, had tried to pull a fast one on Krishna by inundating the villagers of Vrindavan with rain and hail and devastation because of not getting what he wanted, getting his little sacrifice, and realizing, whoops, I made a mistake. This is my worshipful Lord, Sri Krishna, Sri Vishnu. And so he came, and of course, as a great devotee, Krishna, as devotees and demigods oftentimes are in very powerful positions, so they get puffed up real easily. What to say about people in the material world who don't even think about God? They get puffed up in their positions of power and fame. So, but unlike most of us living in the material world and not being very humble, Lord Indra immediately remembered his position and came and begged for forgiveness from Krishna, and realizing what a fool he was. And so we are now continuing in the story. And this story we're going to read tonight is called Releasing Nanda Maharaj from the Clutches of Varuna. Very exciting. So Varuna is the demigod of the oceans and rivers, the bodily waters, and a powerful demigod, like most demigods. And Nanda Maharaj, of course, is the father of Krishna. So this is very exciting. We'll see what happens in this story. The Govardhan Ceremony took place on the new moon day. After this, there were torrents of rain and hailstorms imposed by King Indra for 7 days. 9 days of the waxing moon had passed, and on the 10th day, King Indra worshipped Lord Krishna, and thus the matter was satisfactorily settled. After this, on the 11th day of the full moon, there was Ekadasi. So Ekadasi, Ekadasi, sometimes as it's pronounced, is a celebration that happens every full moon, 11th day in the Vedic cultures, that one abstains from grains, different kinds of grains, and usually there's fasting, and there's different levels of kinds of fastings that go on for devotees of Krishna, who take the time to eat lighter, or maybe not even eat at all, or drink water. Some cases there are fastings of water, no water fast. And they spend the day, focusing more heavily on spiritual life, on the scriptures, on chanting, on doing more spiritual things, because it's not just for the sake of fasting. It's not really the point. The point is to basically learn to control and condition your mind and your body and your senses to be able to focus more easily on Krishna. And some days, because of the waxing and waning of the moon, there are more tendencies to be in the modes of passion and ignorance, and abstaining from very heavy kinds of foods, even if they are a vegetarian diet, is recommended by Lord Krishna for devotees to just abstain, take a moment, fast. We also have other fasting days on certain kinds of appearance days of the Supreme Lord or of our Guru Dev. And so it just is all part of the process of learning to control our tongue, control our senses, control our mind, and to redirect things more easily on Krishna. As it is said, there is a maxim I was hearing just recently from my godbrother, talking about reading from some scriptures, and he was pointing out that there are some maxims of basically encapsulating the idea behind devotional service of always remembering Krishna, never forgetting Krishna. And that's the goal. Doing those things that help us remember Krishna, remember his pastimes, remember our loving relationship with him, and not forgetting him by doing things that take us away from Krishna. So this is another process here, Ekadasi. Maharaj Nanda observed fasting for the whole day. And just early in the morning of the Devadashi, the day after Ekadasi, he went to take bath in the river Jamuna. He entered deep into the water of the river, but he was arrested immediately by one of the servants of Varuna Dev. These servants brought Nanda Maharaj before the demigod Varuna and accused him of taking a bath in the river at the wrong time. According to astronomical calculations, the time in which he took bath was considered demoniac. The fact was, Nanda Maharaj wanted to take a bath in the river Jamuna early in the morning before the sunrise, but somehow or other he was a little too early, and he bathed at an inauspicious time. Consequently, he was arrested. When Nanda Maharaj was taken away by Varuna's servants, his companions began to call loudly for Krishna and Balaram. So, of course, here we go again. Krishna and Balaram come to the rescue. Immediately, Krishna and Balaram could understand that Nanda Maharaj was taken by Varuna, and thus they went to the abode of Varuna, for they were pledged to give protection. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, the unalloyed devotees of the Lord, having no shelter other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally cried to him for help, exactly like children who do not know anything but the protection of their parents. This is very wonderful. So the stories of Krishna, as we can see, the devotees of Krishna are completely surrendered. They have, a lot of times because of the Yoga Maya energy, they may act in a loving relationship with Krishna, pretending to be the boss of Krishna or the father and mother of Krishna. But when it comes to push comes to shove, and there's danger to be had, and there are in these stories we see, they immediately go to Krishna. They don't rely on any other kind of protection, any kind of, as Bhaktivedanta Swami would say, fallible soldiers, the things that we put our trust and our faith in, the fallible soldiers, the things in our life, whether they be a spouse, our family, our jobs, our possessions, whatever they might be in this material world, everything that we try to trust and think, oh, this will save me or that will save me. In the end game, it doesn't. The only thing that actually gives true protection is the protection of Sri Krishna. Demigod Varuna received Lord Krishna and Balaram with great respect and said, "My dear Lord, actually at this very moment, because of your presence, I am materially defeated. Although I am the proprietor of all the treasures in the water, I know that such possessions do not make for a successful life. But this moment, as I look at you, my life is made completely successful because by seeing you, I no longer have to accept a material body. Therefore, O Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Supreme Brahman, and Super Soul of everything, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the Supreme Transcendental Personality. There is no possibility of imposing the influence of material nature upon you. I am very sorry that by being foolish, by not knowing what to do or what not to do, I have mistakenly arrested your father, Nanda Maharaj. So I beg your pardon for the offense of my servants. I think that it was your plan to show me your mercy by your personal presence here. My dear Lord Krishna, Govinda, be merciful upon me. Here is your father. You can take him back immediately." Just like a devotee admitting the mistake he made. And he makes a very important point here that despite there being rules and regulations in the material world for people to make to like I was saying before, remember Krishna, not forget Krishna, engage in the rules and regulations for a purpose of elevating one's consciousness, he says that you are not under the laws or the rules and regulations. You're not affected by the material energy. You are not affected or even really have to follow the rules and regulations, even though Krishna many times says he follows them as common men follow great men in what they do. So Krishna was saying in the Bhagavad Gita that he and Arjuna should follow the rules and regulations to educate the populace in general. But Varuna, being intelligent enough to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, admits his mistake, makes the point that I have this rule here and we arrested your father, your dear devotee, with the mistake that think he was just a very common person. In this way, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rescued his father and presented before his friends with great jubilation. Nanda Maharaj was surprised that, although the demigod was so opulent, he offered such respect to Krishna. This was very astonishing to Nanda, and he began to describe the incident to his friends and relatives with great wonder. So there again, the devotees of Krishna, under the influence of Yogamaya, they're like, why did that happen? Varuna, he's got all the oceans, but Varuna is saying, I understand that even though I have all this wealth and everything, that I understand that it will not make me happy in the end game. But seeing you, being in your presence, now my life is successful. This is the attitude that a devotee should have. This is the kind of remembrance and the kind of attitude one should cultivate in their life, and stay away from those things that draw us away, draw us back into the material consciousness and forgetfulness of our Father, Mother, our dear Lord Krishna, who is our greatest friend and well-wisher. Actually, although Krishna was acting so wonderfully, Maharaj Nanda and Mother Yashoda could not think of him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead, they always accepted him as their beloved child. So this is this loving relationship. They don't want it, Krishna doesn't want, and they actually also don't want to be in this relationship of awe and reverence. They want to be in a relationship where, it's our child, and we want to protect our child, and, it's very wonderful. Because somebody who's in an awe and reverence sort of worship of God, they're a little bit afraid of God. They want to, like, dear Lord, pray before the burning bush. It's like they don't want to go and get burned in that center. But, these devotees of Krishna and the gopis, they have the most highest pinnacle of love for Krishna in this, this relationship, this conjugal love, this parental love, the friendship of love. It's very wonderful. Actually, although Krishna was acting so I read that. Thus, Nanda Maharaj did not accept the fact that Varuna worshipped Krishna because Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he took it that because Krishna was such a wonderful child, he was respected even by Varuna. The friends of Nanda Maharaj, all the coward men, became eager to know if Krishna were actually the Supreme Personality and if he were going to give them all salvation. When they were all thus consulting amongst themselves, Krishna understood their minds, and in order to assure them of their destiny in the spiritual kingdom, he showed them the spiritual sky. Generally, ordinary persons are engaged simply in working hard in the material world, and they have no information that there is another kingdom or another sky, which is known as the spiritual sky, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a person returning to that spiritual sky never returns to this material world of death and suffering. So although this world is full of misery, full of distress, suffering at every step, yet people are convinced, even though they know in the back of their mind that eventually their time will be done here, but they just kind of, I got things to do. I got to get this, I got to get that, I got to find my happiness, and they're just like, the intelligent and wise one is the one who just finally realizes, why is it that there is no happiness? There's very little happiness in this world. What do we spend in 24 hours, just even taking an average day? Those things that were not more like relief, like, okay, I was tired, and I went to sleep last night because I was tired. It was a nice sleep, but that was because I needed to be relieved from my tiredness. Or, I ate some good food today, but the food was actually just relief of my hunger that was causing me misery. And so most situations, there's very little happiness and joy in the things that we, there's some enjoyment in the world, but it's fleeting, it's temporary, and it doesn't come very often. Most of our day is spent in maintaining our existence. But how wonderful it can be when you engage in sadhana bhakti, when you engage in your development, you can actually taste that happiness. You can grow in your spiritual progress and have purpose and vision and equilibrium in your life. So it's very wonderful. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always anxious to give information to the conditioned soul that there is a spiritual sky far, far beyond this material sky, transcendental to the innumerable universes created within the total material energy. Krishna wants us to know that information is present. It came from Krishna in the Vedas. The Vedas means truth. It is a science. It is there. There is a process by which you can come. But you have to have the faith. You have to have the capability. And most people don't want to have that. And any kind of time that they're like, well, show me God, or, I don't see God, and I don't believe this is all fairy tales that you guys are making up. It's not really with a desire to know about the absolute truth, because they in their own heart would rather keep themselves as the all-in-all knowing person. And I know a lot of people who are like this. I don't really engage with them in conversation, because I know, and deep in their heart, they're not really interested in knowing the absolute truth. So I just tell them, look, if you come to that point where you really want to know, at least how do you do that? How do you come to know the absolute truth? How do you come to engage in this process? Oh, well, here you go. You say these names, and you have to have a little bit of faith. Just like when you go to the doctor, you don't say, doctor's like, well, you have this disease and you need to take this medicine in order to get better. And you're like, how long you been being a doctor for? I mean, I don't see it. I don't see my disease. I don't see how this thing is going to work. You don't do that, you actually, but you can see that, because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita many times, many people have engaged in this science of bhakti yoga in the past, and have come to the point of the absolute truth, and been able to share it with people. The proof is actually in the eating. It's not in the talking about things. You have to have a little faith that, like, if I tell you, oh, chocolate pie is really tasty and it's very creamy, it's very wonderful, you're like, you've never tasted chocolate pie, and you're listening to me, you're like, okay, well, that's kind of interesting, but I still haven't tasted chocolate pie. So I say, well, here's the names of Krishna, try that, and then you're like, no, that's actually pretty good, that tastes really good, I think I'll, and then you hear from the devotees, and you hear the truth, and you think, wow, okay, that's, I can some of that I can understand now. I'm experiencing that. And so you have a little bit of faith, but you have to start with that little bit of faith, that I want to know what the absolute truth is. I want to inquire. That's a real scientific process. It's a true scientific process. Anybody who's a scientist, which should herald that as being a true scientific process, to inquire into the absolute truth, to apply the process, what we call the experimental, but in this case it's not experimental, it's the truth. You can, if you apply the process, then you actually see the truth. It's very, very wonderful. He's especially, okay, so we says, Krishna is of course very kind to every conditioned soul, but as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, he is especially inclined to the devotees. So obviously, if you have someone who's really engaging and trying to know you, and want to, engage and learn about their love for you, the Father loves all children, but the one who engages in the service of the Father is also they're inclined to that, because they can see this person really wants to know. This person, I love them, but they just don't want to know me. So I always love them, I always care them, I always try to help them. But if they want to go one way, it's like, Bhaktisiddhanta said, you can't go east if you're going west, that's just, and that comes from free choice. So, hearing their inquiries, Krishna immediately thought that his devotees in Vrindavan should be informed of the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha planets therein. Within the material world, every conditioned soul is in the darkness of ignorance. This means that all conditioned souls are under the concept of this bodily existence. Some, in a lot of cases, it's very, very apparent, and they're just blinded by that. Everyone is under the impression that he is of this material world, and with this concept of life, everyone is working in ignorance in different forms of life. Sometimes you may be a butterfly. You know, I think I'm a butterfly. Ooh. Then you go into another life, you're a monkey, you know, and you think like a monkey. In other case, you're a human. You're like, okay, I'm a human, and da-da-da-da, or I'm a man. In other case, you may be a woman. You know, it's never the same. So as long as you stay in the material world, depending on how you engage in the body that you're in, that's what you will become in your next life. But similarly, if you engage your human form of life in the service of Krishna, you won't go back to the material world. Krishna says you will go back to Krishna. You will go back to him in the end if you engage your true intelligence in understanding who you are and what your purpose is. Everyone is under the impression that he is of this material world, and with this concept of life, everyone is working in ignorance in different forms of life. The activities of the particular type of body are called karma, or fruit of action. All conditioned souls under the impression of the bodily concepts are working according to the particular types of body. These activities are creating their future conditional life. Because they have very little information of the spiritual world, they do not generally take to spiritual activities, which are called bhakti yoga. Those who successfully practice bhakti yoga after giving up this present body go directly to the spiritual world and become situated in one of the Vaikuntha planets. The inhabitants of Vrindavan are all pure devotees. Their destination after quitting the body is Krishna Loka. They even surpass the Vaikuntha Lokas. The fact is, those who are always engaged in Krishna consciousness and mature, pure devotional service are given the chance after death to gain Krishna's association in the universes within the material world. Krishna's pastimes are continually going on, either in this universe or in another universe. Just as the sun globe is passing through many places across this earthly planet, so Krishna Lila, or the transcendental advent and pastimes of Krishna, are also going on continually, either in this or another universe. The mature devotees who have completely executed Krishna consciousness are immediately transferred to the universe where Krishna is appearing. So the service of Krishna can actually continue on in other parts of the material universes or material world where Krishna is appearing. So you have the association of Krishna, but you continue to engage in the devotional service of helping regain those lost souls who are stuck in the material world through working with Krishna. It's very wonderful. They don't really care. It's not like, oh, I get to go to the spiritual world, or I want to go. They're basically a devotee of Krishna, just wants to go wherever Krishna wants him to go, wherever he can be of service. If that's in the hellish planet, then he's already in heaven by serving Krishna in hell. This is a very, very wonderful and advanced stage of Krishna consciousness. In that universe, the devotees get their first opportunity to associate with Krishna personally and directly. The training goes on. As we see in the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna within this planet, Krishna therefore revealed the actual feature of the Vaikuntha planet so that the inhabitants of Vrindavan could know their destination. Thus, Krishna showed them the eternal, ever-existing spiritual sky, which is unlimited and full of knowledge. Within this material world, there are different gradations of forms. According to the gradations, knowledge is proportionately manifested. For example, the knowledge in the body of a child is not as perfect as the knowledge of the body of an adult man. Everywhere there are different gradations of living entities in aquatic animals, in plants and trees, in the reptiles and insects, in birds and beasts, and in the civilized and uncivilized human forms of life. Above the human forms of life, there are demigods, charanas and siddhas, up the Brahma Loka, where Lord Brahma lives, and among these demigods there are always different gradations of knowledge. But past this material world in the Vaikuntha sky, everyone is in full knowledge. All the living entities there are engaged in devotional service to the Lord. either in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Krishna Loka. So the matter of consciousness is at different gradations. So sometimes someone is born into a body of a tree, which is extremely mode of ignorance. They're not aware of a lot of things that are going on. They're not able to move around. They're not even aware that they're really almost there. It's almost like a sleep state. So, you go go through different kinds of animals, different forms of species, human form, the demigod form, and the consciousness is higher and higher, or lower and lower, respectively. But here they're saying in the spiritual world, everyone is in full knowledge and full consciousness of Krishna. Everywhere there are okay, so I read that. Above the human form of life, sorry, I read that. As it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, full knowledge means knowing Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Remembering Krishna, knowing Krishna. That is the goal of everything. All the Vedas, all sacrifices is to come to know Krishna, your relationship with Krishna. In the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that the Brahma Jyoti, or spiritual sky, there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. All those planets are self-illuminating, and all of them are eternally situated. There is no question of creation and annihilation in the Brahma Jyoti, spiritual sky. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that beyond the material sky, there is another eternal spiritual sky where everything is eternally existing. Information of the spiritual sky can be had only from great sages and saintly persons who have already surpassed the influence of the three material modes of nature. Unless one is constantly situated on that transcendental platform, it is not possible to understand the spiritual nature. Therefore, it is recommended that one should take to bhakti yoga and keep himself engaged 24 hours in Krishna consciousness, which places one beyond the reach of the modes of material nature. One in Krishna consciousness can easily understand the nature of the spiritual sky and Vaikuntha Loka. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, being always engaged in Krishna consciousness, could therefore very easily understand the transcendental nature of the Vaikuntha Lokas. They're making that point that everybody in Vrindavan is already thinking about Krishna constantly, all day long. Everything has to do with Krishna. So when they saw that, they could understand it very clearly. Thus Krishna led all the coward men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, to the lake where Akura was later shown the Vaikuntha planetary system. We'll get to that story later. They took their bath immediately and saw the real nature of the Vaikuntha Loka. After seeing the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha Lokas, all the men headed by Nanda Maharaj felt wonderfully blissful. Coming out of the river, they saw Krishna, who was being worshipped with excellent prayers. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 28th chapter of Krishna, releasing Nanda Maharaj from the clutches of Varuna. So this is why we have these classes. This is why, we spend a lot of time during the day in the material world doing things that are, as my spiritual master would say, distractions. Don't be distracted. Always think of Krishna. Always remember Krishna. Always engage in Krishna. Chant Krishna's names. Serving Krishna. There are 9 limbs of Bhakti Yoga, of Krishna consciousness, including hearing and chanting, which Lord Chaitanya and Mahaprabhu said is the most important, chanting the names of Krishna. But there are so many other things that we can do in the day-to-day to remember Krishna, to come to a point where we can taste love for Krishna and go back to Krishna. Thank you very much. I am going to continue chanting, and if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to make the comment in the comment section below. And thank you very much. Let's chant. Come on, Capo. There we go. Haribo Nitago Okay, thank you very much. That's all for tonight. And stay tuned for the next video and next chapter in our Krishna book reading. Good night. Aloha. Namaste.